my name is Monique Calisti. I'm the CEO of Martel Innovate. That is a small company in Switzerland that last year funded and founded Digital for Planet as a non-profit association to whom we are dedicating a lot of our energy and effort and free time on a voluntary basis. So today I will tell you a little bit more about Digital for Planet to start with. I already mentioned we are a non-profit organization based in Switzerland, and our ambition is to support the design, development, and adoption of sustainable digital technologies, system solutions that can, on the one hand, empower people, communities, and a number of verticals via dedicated applications, but that can also help protecting the environment. And we also believe that individuals counts, organizations as well, but without a clear commonly shared agenda and without clear synergies across industry, across private sector, across policy making, it's not going to be possible to make the difference that the planet needs as soon as possible. I mentioned already these few points. Clearly, to have the possibility to access greener digital technologies will make the difference even in the short term. Especially in these pandemic times, we have realized how much our lives, how much essential services depend on digital technologies. But we also developed a sort of addiction. We also developed a sort of dependency and a sort of tendency to overuse digital solutions, which by the way, consume a lot of energy. So we need to rethink our digital habits and go back to what somebody called digital sobriety. We need to rethink habits in a way that we can, on the one hand, empower humans, on the other, protect the environment. Now, clearly, digital technologies have been and are used also to monitor the environment, optimize the way we use resources, optimize processes, monitor specific situations, specific critical situations, leading to energy savings. And this is happening across a number of sectors, from buildings, smart cities, manufacturing, smart agricultures, and you name it. But clearly, while technologies are part of the solution, they are also part of the problem. There are estimates about ICT consumption that could grow up to 20% of global electricity by 2025, generating 5.5 CO2 emissions by then. And this year already, by the end of 2020, there are 25 billion connected things that are expected to be there. So technology is clearly driving electricity demand on the one hand, but it's also damaging the environment in the sense that all the devices that we use are eating a lot of precious natural resources, rare minerals, and in the whole mining process, but also on the disposal of electronic devices, we are really polluting the environment. Then clearly the fact that there is so much dependency on technologies and on consumption of technologies is also generating a vicious circle effect, increasing the energy that we are deploying for spending so much time within, let's say, our virtual social environments. Now, clearly, there is a trade-off. We must look for a better trade-off between what digital can do for the environment and what the digital is doing despite the environment. So what we need to realize is that this balance is not easy to achieve, given that there is a lot of pressure from economical and political side to ensure the growth of our economies. So with technologists, researchers, and policymakers, the idea is to look how we can envisage solutions and differences that can help changing this tendency. Now, Digital for Planet is in action in several ways. I will not go so much into the details now because I would like to leave the floor to our speakers. But what is important is that it is an association which welcomes individuals and organizations that are at work across several domains in a multidisciplinary perspective. And while we're doing events, webinars, informative sessions, and gathering resources that we map into specific projects, also helping organizations to put together their proposals and projects, what we tried to do was to focus our efforts and resources on four main topics. One is the one that we will be discussing today, Cloud, Edge, and IoT at the convergence of a so-called digital continuum are indeed a major source of energy consumption. On the other hand, the promise of the edge is also to be able to reduce this CO2 footprint. So today we will discuss about that with experts from different fields. Then we have three other working groups that today we will not discuss. One is focusing on sustainable smart cities, one on next generation internet, green next generation internet, and one on sustainable next generation smart networks and services. And you see in this slide the dates for the next webinars. Now, before going into what we will discuss later on, that are the green opportunities in Horizon Europe, I would like to give the floor to our speakers. I am not sure if we have Björg with us.
Not yet, Monique.
Not yet, yeah.
Okay, we don't have him with us. So
yes, he is here.
Yes, I joined.
Yes, he just joined, I think.
Okay, Björn, are you there? Because it would be time for you now for your slot.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Björn, we can hear you. Welcome to the Digital for Planet webinar. I would like to give you the floor for a short introduction about yourself, who you are, and give you also the screen, if needed, to present the initiatives at the European Commission that are helping or planning to help in this digital transition. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope this is better. I'm sorry I joined a little late, but so my name is Søren Giegler. I work in the European Commission, specifically as a senior digital innovation specialist, and I work on digital and green. So I'm very pleased to join you and about this exciting new program. And I could basically provide you a quick overview of our initiatives. So, as you know, the Green Deal, European Green Deal, is a key priority for the Commission. Do you want me to already start my presentation, or? Yes, okay. So basically, yes. So the European Green Deal is a key priority for the Commission, and in here particularly also the intersection between digital and climate change, or digital and sustainability. So whereby a lot of people work either on basically the Green Deal, or they work on digital. Very few programs really focus on the intersection. And so that's the main work area we are focusing on at the moment. So the Paris Agreement clearly pointed out that there's an important need for innovations and digital technologies to support the green agenda, and that the climate change targets unfortunately will not be met if we don't have a major boost, if I may say so, in terms of innovations and disruptive new technologies. Second, the green and digital transformation, they're both taking place at the same time, and they're fundamentally changing our societies, the economy, society, our way of life. You know, the seminar is the best example. We all connect online. So basically, therefore, it's critical to take advantage of the intersection. We work particularly on strategic digital technologies such as AI, blockchain, IoT, supercomputing, and we believe that they could provide important opportunities to enhance sustainability, while we are also working a lot on greening the ICT sector. So we're very cognizant of the fact that the ICT sector itself is increasingly with about 8 to 10% of electricity consumption. So is it the problem, or is it the solution, or is it somewhere in between?
So basically, I was just talking about the challenge to scale up innovations in Europe, particularly also related to clean tech, and that there are many very innovative startups and SMEs. However, in the area, there's relatively little investments. So next slide, please. So here, this is what I was just addressing about the issues of we're of course very concerned of the energy consumption of Bitcoin, the data centers, and as you have in the seminar on cloud computing, edge computing. So we are working a lot on the greening of ICTs, and there are of course a lot of solutions that are favoring more energy-friendly technologies and that reduce the CO2 emissions of the ICT sector itself. Concerning this, I'm happy to share with you that actually next week on March 19th, so we are launching the European Green Digital Coalition, which is basically a pledge by CEOs of telecommunications and tech companies to greening the sector. So, but this will take place next week on the 19th of March. And we also have the support from all member states. So all member states will sign a declaration on the digital and green transformation. So this is, I cannot yet share more to this because it's really being announced only next week. So sorry for this pre-teaser. But the whole idea basically is that we are basically we need a coalition. We need a partnership between government, private sector, and also academics and civil society to raise the awareness about the importance of digital and green and the intersection. Quickly here, we're also working on the circular economy. So we are working on a product passport. The whole notion is that, for instance, mobile phones, the production itself of mobile phones is has so much negative impact on the environment and is causing a lot of CO2 emissions. And we have calculations that if we could expand the lifespan of the mobile phone by only 2 years, that this would drastically reduce the CO2 emissions. So that's also one area we are working on closely. Thank you. Next slide, please. So here you see the first leg of the program, greening of ICT. As I mentioned, energy efficiency of data centers, lifespan of electronic equipments. And then we also work we are working very close with our colleagues from DG Klima and DG Environment, so across the Commission services, also on the transparency. So for instance, of the carbon footprint. Hereby, particularly, we believe that the use of blockchain technologies could be potentially a game changer, at least enhancing the tracking and traceability of CO2 emissions across the entire supply chain. And last but not least, we work on the eco-labeling and green public procurement. Next slide, please. So as I pointed out before, so we believe that according to our data, the ICT sector could in fact reduce greenhouse gas emissions by between 15 and 20% by 2040, and that its positive enabling effect could be 7 to 10 times higher than its own footprint. And these are data we have from studies and we've conducted, and also from the ITU and other sources. What is important is that the digitalization should be applied across all sectors of the economy and integrated. So particularly, we think, for instance, a sector people do not talk so much about is agriculture, forestry. So for instance, precision farming, the use of satellite imagery to enhance the efficiency of farming and to reduce, for instance, the use of pesticides could be a very effective way to support the environment. So it is across all of these sectors, because ICT, as you very much know, is a cross-sectorial topic, and it's about the mainstreaming of it in the sectors. So of course, the big items is the first, which is the decarbonization of the energy grids, smart grids, systems, smart cities, buildings. We have a very ambitious program to enhance the energy efficiency of buildings and to promote smart mobility. But you know, we really wanted to mention that cement, for instance, causes a lot of CO2 emissions, the production, the manufacturing sectors, also SMEs. So it's not just about big industry. So we are having discussions on the ETS, which does currently not include the smaller businesses, as you know, and basically how could we use also these technologies across all sectors. But having said that, this requires a fundamental, and if I may say so, radical rethinking of the model, and requires the sectors as well to own this agenda and cannot be driven, say, really by the digital sector itself. But this is much more about the adoption of the technology, and this is one of the big challenges that many countries, we saw, for instance, data from Germany, France, other member states, where actually the adoption of digital technologies in SMEs is still relatively low, and it's much more than Industry 4.0. Next slide, please. So here got very concretely examples of these programs. So here the mobilization of industry, circular economy. So it's a key enabler for the circular economy to enhance the lifespan of smartphones and of tablets and other issues, to develop a standard. So this is another topic which is challenging, because we work with ETSI and also ITU standards. However, currently, at least, we have not yet seen really track, you know, the enabling part of ICT. So how do we measure whether in fact we are making progress or not? And if you have any advice on this, very much welcome. So we are now launching the pilot program on this together with the European Parliament, because it's very important to develop a rigorous measurement framework for industry that then also can be, if you wish, hold accountable to meet those standards. So we are working on this as well. Here the example I mentioned already, renovation of buildings, improved energy efficiency by 15 to 25% by smart buildings and ICT. Just think about the use of IoT devices. Then the smart mobility, of course. And last but not least, as I mentioned, the precision agriculture and farming activities, which we also believe could be a transformation. Next slide, please. So here are the programs. So first is Shaping European Digital Future. We have developed the European strategy on data. So we believe it's very important to have a clear data policy that protects the citizens' right, privacy, and also the GDPR compliancy. So the data is the fundamental underlying issue. We have launched in March last year the European new SME strategy, which is specifically focused on sustainability and digital. And here we are following up through a particular program which we are currently developing, which is on clean tech. So the Digital Clean Tech Investment Program is currently developed with member states. So the programs you see, of course, Horizon Europe is focused on research and innovation. Then second, we have, which is for us, of course, very exciting news, we have for the first time since January of this year, the Digital Europe program, which is a 7.5 billion euro program, specifically only focused for the digital transformation. And in here, cloud computing, edge computing is a key priority, 5G, AI, blockchain. We are supporting digital innovation hubs through this program as well, and integrating the whole agenda of digital for sustainability. Then we work currently closely on the Recovery and Resilience Facility. You might have heard about this very ambitious plan. So this is really being implemented by EU member states. And these plans are currently being developed by each government. And we are in close dialogue with many member states on integrating a component for digital and green into those plans. Few people know this, these plans are all public, so you can look them up for many countries already. And they will be, it's expected that they will be finalized by the end of April. Last but not least is our big investment program. So it's the Invest EU program, in which basically we are providing funding for investments in different type of program. We have the sustainability window and the SME window, and also the research and innovation and digitalization. Next slide. So yes, I already talked about this. Oh yeah, but now importantly, so what is oxymoron, if I may say so, and please let me be a little bit provocative here. So while everybody talks about climate change and everybody says how critical clean tech solutions are, there is extremely little investments. There is basically the data we have seen is that only around 8% of global venture capital goes into clean tech, only 8%. So this is not only in Europe, this is across the globe, but particularly in Europe, where we have now around 22% of the global market for clean tech in terms of investments. Yeah, I'm now talking about investments. So we are leading in many areas of developing those technologies, but as I tried to say before, we are not so successful in scaling them up. So our estimates is, so the global market of clean tech is approximately 16 billion, whereby the US and Canada invests around 10 billion. And in Europe, we are approximately investing 3 to 4 billion annually. So we have basically identified this very significant gap of about 6 billion per year. And that's why we would like to propose a pooling of resources between the EU, the member states, also national promotional banks and the private sector. And I mean, Switzerland is an associate country, so you're fully eligible for our programs, also under Horizon. And we work very closely also in the area of blockchain, for instance. So this is a key action. I'm sorry, this is a key action under the EU's SME strategy to develop such a program that, as I said, would combine resources from the different funding. And a very similar program for AI and blockchain, which is now fully operational and is investing 700 million euros into artificial intelligence and blockchain. But we want to expand this and focus it also on digital clean tech. Next slide, please. So here, this is a key priority for our InvestEU program. I think I already mentioned this, and the other aspect is we are also in close contact with the European Investment Bank and the EBRD, but also the World Bank to see how we could raise more funding. What is very important in this we have identified is equity and growth financing. So while there's a lot of financing for larger scale infrastructure programs, we feel that there is a need to more support innovative startups and SMEs that work either on the further development or on the adoption of digital technologies. And there is, we have seen that there's a real investment gap. Then the advisory services. So basically, we have seen that a lot of companies have issues developing strong business cases, business plans, and to make what in finance would call investment ready or bankable projects. So the transition from research to development to really investment programs is challenging sometimes and requires more support in terms of advisory services. So I'm cognizant of the time. I don't know how much time you still would like to spend.
You still have time. We scheduled until 45, but we wanted to maybe leave the floor to some of the questions that the audience might have to you, Soren. So, but you still have a few minutes, so please go ahead. It's very dense and very interesting what you're telling us.
Yes, okay, well, I hope it's useful to you. Maybe we could take even some questions now,
sure,
if that's helpful.
Absolutely.
So it will be a little bit more interactive, yeah.
So I see a few questions here, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you, Soren, what about, we've talked about important investments that are planned ahead, but we know that there is a certain delay also due to the pandemic situation. When do you think the first concrete opportunities will be available out there for the innovators?
Well, at the moment, we already have concrete opportunities through the European Innovation Council. So there's the so-called EIC. They have regular call for proposals where companies can provide. This, by the way, is a huge change, yeah, for us. So the EIC, for the first time, directly invests equity into companies. So, and the EIC provides these calls already. So this is fully operational already. So, and then the other programs I am referring to, of course, to COVID, we had the delays, that's correct. But the resilience and recovery facility is supposed to be fully operational by the end of this year. So, yeah. But it's managed by government.
Thank you, Soren. I see that there were a couple of questions in the chat about, you know, figures that you were referring to that were not aligned with the figures that I show in one of my slides. But here I would like to say that there's many different market reports. There's many scientific and technical reports. So I also think that within you know, this context, there's new data emerging every second day, so it's difficult to say to have a unique one, and one has to also see with respect to the sources what is exactly the measurement that they give. So I guess so. And one question, very simple: will we be able to share the slides that you have presented with the participants to the webinar? Would you be okay?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Go ahead. Like we would like to engage with the participants. That's
and I guess that you might provide any reference to the sources, because if people might have more specific question, I encourage them to drop you an email offline, because now it's very difficult to go to the specific figures and maybe refer to the document.
But there I would like to also, as you just pointed out, have some understanding. The issue is, as you said, this is a relatively new area, and there's not a really absolute clear methodology in place. So that, I think, is very important. There are basically conflicting research reports on the exact measurement, and that's why we are now launching this new program, which is basically will assess all the existing methodologies and then hopefully develop a more rigorous measurement. I mean, I'm sorry, I did my PhD on impact evaluations, impact assessment. So it can be very rigorous. Measurement is essential. But I would like to emphasize that this is exactly one of the key challenges we are facing, particularly in the enabling part of ICT. So there is not clear evidence yet what the exact figures will be. And it very much depends on the adoption. So how much these technologies will be adopted, and to predict that is very difficult.
Yes, I think this is a very good point, and this is also something that we have identified, the fact that there are not necessarily standardized metrics or methodologies to assess the environmental footprint of ICT technologies. But I think that all these efforts, all the push that there is nowadays to create a different culture, and most of all to start creating awareness of what is the impact of digital, it's changing. And there is an increasing movement of people and initiatives at the European level, but also at the global level, that are pushing in that direction. Now, I have one question that is specific to SMEs. You mentioned the fact that, of course, one of the main ambitions or objectives of the European Commission is also to facilitate the transition towards a greener way, a greener digital transition from the smaller players. And of course, here it boils down also to the dependency for many of these companies, for many of these small players, on big software, hardware suppliers that might not be as green as we would like. So how do you see this situation? What can be done in this direction to break this dependency on major global players that might not be as green as Europe wants?
So I think one aspect is very important to track CO2 emissions and climate change across the entire supply chain. So basically from the cradle to the grave, how it's said. But yeah, and here SMEs are playing a critical role. So for instance, we are working on the question on blockchain, concretely we're working with Sitra in Finland, Innovation Fund, on, for instance, developing a use case how this can be measured along the supply chain from in the wood construction sector. So it's very dependent on the sector, but I agree that this is a major challenge, but we have to see it holistically and not just one actor at a time. So we also have programs in place to support now the digitalization of SMEs. So there is a specific program by, it's called COSME. COSME is our SME instrument, and we have just launched last year a specific program supporting digitalization of SMEs. There was a question, I know the energy consumption of blockchain. So we are also very concerned about this, but I think what is very, very important, blockchain is not Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, like blockchain is much, much more than Bitcoin. So basically blockchain is about the adoption of blockchain technology in mobility, in the tokenization of the economy. And second, Ethereum, for instance, and other blockchain protocols are now moving to a proof of work to proof of consent. Basically, there's a new version of blockchain which is much less energy consumption than before, much more energy efficient, I'm sorry. So, but we are also having if you're interested, we have the Blockchain Observatory on Forum, which is an complete open think tank. And we are right at the moment working on a specific paper on the question of blockchain and energy consumption.
Thank you very much. Thank you also for the question, Giacomo. I suggest, since Soren will be anyway with us in the rest of the panel discussions, that we move now to our panelists. Thanks a lot, Soren, for the very dense and relevant information. I'm sure there will be follow-up interactions and questions with you. Now I would like to leave the floor to our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and what they will tell us about today. First, a quick tour de table, just to say who you are and 2 words about your organization. Just a quick note, Babak, you look incredibly dark. Your background looks. We see a black shade, and I guess it's you. Anyway, so I would start with Babak, then with Simon, Rob, Federico, and then Nicola. Please, guys, go ahead. I might mind the time, huh? Just that you know.
Can you see me now, or am I still black?
We can see you better now.
Okay. Apparently, it froze. I don't know why it froze. So.
No, we can see you better.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Good. So my name is Babak Falsafi. I'm at EPFL, and I just have a few slides about data centers. So data centers are a growing market. They basically provide centralization of IT services, and that in that sense, they're actually quite efficient. and they improve efficiency. The growth by Technavia is projected 17% annually. This was the 2018 report, and the storage at about 28%. Data centers are proliferating across multiple dimensions. So when we started working on building data centers, we're talking about hyperscale, big public clouds about 10 years ago. But now there are reasons why we would also build data centers closer to the source, both for privacy and security reasons for certain type of use case, but also because we need now fast decision making closer to the source. So that's going to be boosted by not just AI, but also 5G and mobility and the edge clouds. So the good news is that data centers are an enabler. The bad news is that the foundational technologies behind digital platforms, which is silicon-based, followed what is called the Moore's law of density, which is every 2 years you get twice as much density out of your silicon. So basically, it's almost a capability, exponential capability for free for 50 years. I have a little cartoon here that shows that if you look at a time horizon of 2005, 2015, if you continue doubling your density every 2 years, you'll get 20x density in 10 years without doing anything, right? That does not take into account, of course, the fabrication emissions and those things that we talked about. Now, if this thing slows down, and it has slowed down, so instead of doubling every 2 years, it's doubling every 5 years, and eventually it'll come to an end. Moore's law done, it's basically dead 10 years from now. If you look at a time horizon of 2015, 2025, based on what density we have achieved from silicon, you get 4x for the same exact resource that you built, which means that to be able to keep up with the same trends as what we've had for IT for the past 50 years, we need to build 5 times more, 5 times the number of servers, 5 times the number of digital platforms. So without Moore's law, we just have to build more. That's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, there are technologies like Bitcoin, blockchain. We talk about proof of concept versus proof of consent. That's a very good, amazing trend. Now, in the case of blockchain, proof of work is just redundant work. I mean, we're just calculating a lot of stuff, throwing it away. In the case of AI, we're not doing redundant work. We're actually calculating things that perhaps we don't need, but these are different calculations. They're not copies of the same calculation. And these are also growing slower than blockchain, not at the same rate as blockchain, but AI is boosting, right, in terms of application. So this article from MIT Review in 2019 says that for some type of application, which is transformers of language technologies, and this is an application that many big IT companies in the US and the government of China and many Chinese companies are heavily investing in. They're investing in platforms of tens of billions of euros for just one technology to solve transformers. Some particular type of transformer could have emissions as much as 5 American cars for the lifetime of the car. And American cars are usually bigger than European cars, just to put things into perspective. We've been working on this problem in EcoCloud at EPFL. We're looking at post-Moore data centers, what happens when Moore's law dies. We've been working on it since 2011. We're looking at efficiency and emissions. We're looking at decarbonizing workloads, algorithms, and infrastructure. There is also a label now out through the Swiss Data Center Efficiency Association, which is a partner of EcoCloud. We've gone live this past January. We're happy to announce that if you have any questions, please let us know. There's a QR code, there's a website. We quantify IT efficiency, not just from the perspective of the hardware technology and servers, but also in terms of utilization and what the workloads are doing. In terms of DC, we quantify not just cooling and electricity, but we also quantify recapturing heat, which is a novel technology, which is sort of showing up now, emerging, quite interest. And then in terms of emissions, we're looking at bringing renewables. We want to boost renewables and the entire ecosystem in the DC infrastructure. And so we quantify the emissions of the ingress electricity. That's all I have. I apologize if it took a few more minutes than needed.
No, it's okay. We are agile. So let's do like this. So Simon, if you want to introduce yourself and maybe already your work and what you had planned to tell us, please go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Monique, Verena, and Amrita, and the other Digital for Planet team. It's great that you bring this up, this topic, and be here. It's an honor. So I really appreciate it. I'm Simon. I'm a researcher. I've studied renewable energy engineering, and I'm working in this topic of data centers and sustainability and ICT and sustainability since 5 years now. I'm working at the Border Step Institute in Berlin. We are a small non-profit research organization, independent from any university. And we are doing research about this topics about sustainability in ICT since 2007. And we have a comprehensive model of data center landscape in Germany and in Europe, about the energy consumption and about like how much servers are out there. And we are making research projects and studies mainly for the public sector, but also for some associations, for some also for the Friends of the Earth Germany, for example, and in other projects or in some projects, we also work together with data center operators to find new solutions or to improve these solutions. So that's what we are doing, and I think that's for the first round, it's enough.
Thank you, Simon. Just one question, Simon. Recently, your organization has published an important report. Will you tell us a little bit more about the report?
Yeah, I can give you a short insight. Like the report was made from the Environmental Agency Austria together with us in 2019 and 2020, and was published in November last year. And the focus was on energy efficient cloud computing technologies for the cloud computing market for the European Commission. And yeah, we had like 6 topics in that study that like Border Step took over 3 topics, and also the Environmental Agency Austria took over 3 topics. And we researched like the growth in data center energy consumption. For that, we have this bottom-up model where we have like strong indicators like sailing figures of servers, for example. We have we have made a lot of surveys in the past, but also for this study, we have a specific survey on European data center operators, how their technology has changed in the last years. And we put all these data into the model. So we get a comprehensive model for the development of the energy consumption in the data centers. So that is still like we had already this topic in the beginning that there is a lack of data, and that's definitely true. Even that model is just a model that tries to build up the reality as good as possible. But definitely there are other studies, especially worldwide, which have different results for the data center energy consumption. So yeah, we are trying to get as much as possible bottom-up data. You can compare that a bit to Eric Massenet. He's doing the studies for the International Energy Agency, for example, for data centers. He has a bit different assumptions, maybe because he has the background from the US market of data centers, where probably some technological trends in cloud computing were established earlier than here, for example. Or yeah, there are different, a few different assumptions in his model, but the basic approach is actually the same. So yeah, that's what we also have done for the European Commission. We have analyzed all the technologies that are currently evolving and under research. Where is it possible to get more energy efficiency from which technologies? And especially the Environmental Agency Austria has developed some policy recommendations for future policies for data center energy regulation. Yeah, so that is maybe mainly the study. And if you have further questions, don't hesitate to contact me in detail, because the study itself has about 200 or even more than 200 pages. It's quite complex, and if you have any questions regards that, don't hesitate to contact me on LinkedIn or email, or even here if you have questions directly.
I would have a question, Simon. Can you drop here for the audience the link to where the report can be downloaded? I think it's a very interesting report and very actual. So I'm sure that it will be of relevance also to the people participating. I would invite, like Sohan has been doing, and also Babak, I would invite people to share resources or pointers to any relevant report here using the chat. We will gather them and make sure that the participants to the webinar get an acknowledgement email which summarize also these points. Thank you, Simon. Now I would give the floor to Rob. Rob, please, the floor is yours.
Oh, that's not good. Hey, I'm Rob Tiffany. I'm a vice president and head of IoT strategy at Ericsson. I'm also executive director for a nonprofit called the Moab Foundation. I'm so excited that Monique invited me. I feel like she made this whole event just for me, because she knew I got to do so much stuff in the building the cloud at Microsoft and doing IoT and edge stuff. So this is definitely a sweet spot for me. I'll give you some quick facts that are unrelated to the cloud, edge, or IoT, just related. Ericsson, obviously, we make cellular equipment for all the mobile operators around the world. And so there's no shortage of hype right now around 5G. And everybody's going crazy. So one of the interesting things, most people talk about 5G being faster, lower latency, but when it comes to things like sustainability, being able to either do the same with less or do much more with the same, one of the features of 5G that's not talked about is this dramatic increase in capacity. Using the exact same gear, the same hardware that you have, right now you've got cell towers everywhere doing LTE, right? Well, with 5G, you're going to be able to get 100 times more traffic from the same gear. So like in a square kilometer around a cell tower, you'll be able to have up to 1 million concurrently connected things. Could be smartphones, IoT devices, whatever, smart cities. And yet not using any more power and not requiring much more gear to do that. And so I think it's great that we're going to see such a dramatic leap forward in capacity that's going to allow us to build a lot of these big things that we'd like to build, especially around smart cities or kind of V2X with connected cars talking to each other. And so that's an exciting thing. And you can't overstate the importance of connectivity in empowering digital technologies. If we just think about this COVID pandemic we've been living through, and even what we're doing right now, what this universal, the great news is the internet is held together really well. I think we put a lot of stress on the internet and wireless data networks and bandwidth everywhere, as we've all been living on Zoom and Teams and WebEx and everything else. Kids going to school online, and people haven't been flying in airplanes, and now they're really embracing this digital technology. Being able to deliver digital experiences over connectivity to make remote things seem local is kind of a big takeaway. And so it's not like we haven't had this technology for a while, but it really has been put to use. And so we've seen just kind of an inadvertent sustainable boost happen as a result of this. The other thing I'm doing is, this kind of applies to something Soren said earlier, actually, about lack of investment, especially around clean energy or sustainability, things like that. Since I've designed and built some large scale IoT platforms like Azure IoT and Lumada at Hitachi, I still know how to build that stuff. So I've noticed over the years that IoT technology, sensors, actuators, and applying analytics can really do a lot more than just help big business. You can really apply it to a lot of societal problems and things like that. And so I created this nonprofit called the Moab Foundation. Moab's a little town in Utah where they have national parks, where I've built open source IoT technology. It runs at the edge, it's portable. And I'm combining that, basically targeting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so it's kind of a mashup of taking appropriate sustainable development goals and using use cases where IoT technology can make a difference. And then being able to just give the technology away for free. Because I know a lot of the people who are trying to do all the hard work, it's not like they have a lot of cash. And so everybody needs all the help they can get. And so it's early days, but it's definitely an exciting process.
Thank you so much, Rob. You're very dense and a lot of things to discuss possibly. I think this overview that you gave, it's very clear and especially points out several of the elements that relate about a different lifestyle, a different way of working, of living that we have implicitly adopted without possibly being aware of what kind of impact this has on the environment. So yeah. I think time has come to rethink this approach. And I think what we've heard from the speakers, it's that there is an increasing awareness, but also an increasing action on several fronts, from industrials to research to policymakers. Of course, the gap is still big in several ways. So let's see what the smaller players can tell us today. Nicolas, please go ahead, and then Federico.
Hi, thank you for inviting me as well. I'm really pleased to present Carnot and what we are doing to tackle digital pollution. One first thing I want to notice is everybody here today is aware about this pollution. But if you ask to somebody in the street, and they might not be as well aware as us about the digital pollution. And the cloud for them remains just water vapor and nothing more. So it's really important to have a large communication to the society in general, to remind them that every action, including what they are doing on their smartphones, has an impact on the environment. So this is the first thing I want to notice. I'm still struggling with my friends, with my family, but also when I'm invited to talk about what we are doing in Carnot, to explain what are the impacts. Hopefully it's something that is changing in the society, and in France, I don't know exactly for other countries. I know for Europe as well, but in France we have a strong moment here for digital pollution communication. So it's a nice time to do, and I think we have to continue. So about Carnot, I'm the innovation manager at Carnot. We are an SME based in Paris. We are now 50 people working in Carnot. We are not saying that we will change everything, and we can't tackle all the digital pollution, but we are working on the heat produced by the IT resources that is a waste for the digital industry. And we all know that it's not a waste for all industries, and especially for buildings, it's a resource, and it's an important product and an important thing for users, for building users. So we decided to just explode the data center into very small pieces that are installed directly where the heat is necessary, because we know that the heat produced by IT resources is a low-grade heat with a relatively low value. It is a very high investment to recover and to reuse this heat. So we decided just to explode the data center and install the resource where the heat is necessary. At first, as space heaters, electric space heaters. So it's relatively common in France. I know that it's not the same everywhere in Europe and in the world, but in France it's a relatively common product. But we also developed a water boiler, because more or less everybody needs to heat his water for the kitchen or for showers. So we decided to just split the data centers into small pieces and install it wherever we can reuse, recover and reuse the waste heat directly. But we want to cover all the value chain, so we go indeed from the hardware, and we go also to the software part. We are connecting the cloud computing users, such as banks or 3D animation studio, and we just distribute we distribute the computations, the tasks everywhere where the heat is necessary, with our own orchestrator. So we are basically edge by default, and we are recovering heat by default as well, by design. It is our most important DNA. What I just want to say also is that we speak a lot about energy efficiency for data centers. Mostly we use the PUE metric, which is a very important metric in my opinion. I think it's one of the reasons that the data centers really increased their energy efficiency over the last 10 years, maybe more. But I think it's not enough. Even if we have a perfect PUE of 1, the heat is still lost in most of the infrastructure we are knowing today. I know that there is some initiatives to reuse this heat, but mostly it's lost. Even if it's coming from renewable energy, it's a renewable waste heat, so it's not really interesting. And we still want to push the fact that heat has to be recovered if we want to be an actual solution for the society in general and for energy efficiency. We are speaking today about digital energy efficiency, but we Soren also speak about the building sector in energy efficiency, and we can combine both in one. With one energy consumption, we can provide cloud computing capacity and also heat for buildings. So I think we have to push this kind of solutions. Of course, we are providing it, so I want to push it. But the fact is that we can add synergies between industries to increase global energy efficiency. And to come back to my first comment, I think the market will be kind of a solution. If everybody is aware about the pollution, maybe everybody will expect some solutions that will be pushed by the technological providers and also pushed by the regulator and the policymakers.
Thank you very much. I was taking notes. Nicolas didn't mention it, at least I don't think he mentioned that Carnot won an important prize also as an innovative SME, is very engaged on several fronts. So congratulations, Nicolas, to you and your team. I think it's really remarkable how there is an increasing culture that is sort of a bottom-up culture with small players like Carnot that are pushing forward technologies that can really make the difference in several ways. And I think in Europe is the ideal marketplace, and also because of the intrinsic decentralization and diversity of our continent for initiatives like this to really flourish and provide support to other small players. Now, I would like to welcome Federico, that is the CTO of Martel Innovate, and that will tell us more about what's been done there on edge and green computing. Federico, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope you can see my slides. So as Monique said, I'm the CTO of Martel, and as CTO of Martel, I am also engaged in a project which is a CSA centered on cloud computing, and where I'm actually the coordinator. And there we produce different papers analyzing specifically about research challenges and deployment challenges connected to edge computing and also to green cloud. And clearly, when we are living now a transition where more and more it becomes relevant, the ability to leverage processing at the edge for many different reasons that might goes from the latency to the cost, but also, of course, one driver could be also the energy consumption part. Clearly, the technology is not yet very mature for many of the edge computing related technology, but at the same time, this is really an opportunity that we have to make things different from what have been done till today. And especially it is very likely that we will see things moving in new directions. So we'll not have only what is the best practice today, where basically you collect and filter data at the edge, but still then you usually consolidate in some type of cloud. It might be very likely that we are going to go toward more decentralized processing and connection between edge capacities. Now, clearly there are some aspects that are important to be able to foster evolution toward the edge, and 5G that was mentioned before is clearly one of the drivers, but this is also the need to understand what are the implications, and not only at the level of where the data is placed, but on many other factors of this transition toward the edge. And this has really also some key relation with the, if you want, the energy consumption and related matters. Because if you think of an IT infrastructure that goes from the network part to the power source, to the data center infrastructure, to the servers that you have in the data center, and to the software running the data center, clearly in some context there is a lot of research done, and there is a state of the art that is helping us to optimize energy consumption, at least in the closed box of the cloud data center. And this is not always the case for other type of infrastructure that we are using today. Like this is more complex for small cloud provider, and when you want to move toward the edge, of course, the large hyperscaler are not covering all distribution in Europe, and this means you need to leverage of them. And this means that there is a lot of space for optimizing the energy efficiency and the green sources used in this context. And things get even more complex when you go to the single company, because this is not usually something that is very covered in terms of efficiency and best practices. And in fact, if you check the studies of PUA of private company data center, they have very, very bad results in Europe, and this means clearly there is a lot of work to be done. But the things is even more complex when you go to the far edge, where you are considering devices that have no maybe capacity to leverage the same type of energy efficient technology that you might have in the data center, or the scale of efficiency that you can reach in the data center. And the problem might be also about the localization if you want to use renewable sources, because if you have the edge in a place where there is no renewable source, there is not much, of course, you might do about that. And there are really a lot of space for innovation, especially in this area of the edge part, and also taking into account the network connectivity space when it comes to the edge. And in particular, as was mentioned already before, it's clear from our point of view that the there is the need of a change of perspective. You cannot look at the energy efficiency in the cloud edge distributed infrastructure same way you look at a data center where, okay, yeah, we know everything. I compute the POA and then I know, oh, we are POA 1.1. We are great. It's much more complex because there are many factors that you don't control if you want to compute the end-to-end energy efficiency of a solution you're using. So you need new standards. And when you get distributed, of course, the fact that you are moving data around for processing and so on, it is impacting energy efficiency. So the logic in the software needs to take that into account. And also the way you use, as was mentioned by Nicholas, the infrastructure, where you put the workload in this moment or in another moment of the day. And also the network part, because this is really today, and of course we are not in the 5G era, but is one of the areas where, so the far end part of the network is where most of the energy consumption happens in many of the use cases. So for example, if you think about YouTube, most of the energy is consumed between your device and the antenna part. And this is also dealing with the need to change everyday people digital habits, because we are using digital solutions so much. We're so used to put everything in the cloud, the photo on our phone, and we don't care if 10 pictures are all the same and so on. But everyday people, not only the technology per se, the way we use the technology is making an impact, and we need to understand how to change the people habits. And that's most probably the most difficult and challenging part of the work. And this was the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Federico. Thank you very much. Now I would like to check in the chat if there are questions to our speakers, because they've been presenting quite an amazing set of aspects. I see that there's a couple of people dropping links to products, events. Great. I don't see specific question. I would have one. Okay. Well, I think one question that probably goes to the technologies, maybe to Babak and Rob and Nicola and Federico, is about the fact that we have this clear duality among what's the promise of certain technologies like 5G, right? More efficiency, reducing latency, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, it's very difficult as of today to assess, quantify what's going to be the impact of some technologies, because we don't know exactly how their usage will impact the environment. So my question is, as technologists, do you feel that there are the right conditions in Europe, given that we are a continent where there is more regulation, more control, more sort of an ambitious, at least, set of policies that should help regulating this context. And these policies sometimes become, while they facilitate a set of activities, they might slow down the penetration of some technologies. So it's always a matter of finding the right balance. For your company, for your organization, how is this journey towards more advanced solutions, while taking into account that there are some policies that might force us to change the way we develop and use these technologies? I would like this question for all the speakers. Babak, can you start?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that, so we had a conversation about where various technologies are going. I talked about silicon in general. We talked about 5G and other emerging technologies and materials. I'm not sure, you know, I'm a scientist and an engineer, researcher. I'm not a politician. So I can tell you that diving into regulation from day one is probably not the effective solution. I think perhaps we can benefit from subsidy programs to bring technologies into ICT. In my particular case, I focus on data centers. I think there are a lot of really good opportunities to bring renewables into data centers. There are really good opportunities to bring in recycling for efficiency and consumption of electricity. Recycling for material is a technology question, and we don't have a direct answer to. So investing in research on technologies for biodegradable circuits or technology to recycle circuits would be good policy. But subsidies to integrate technologies to bring them into this ecosystem, I think would be good.
If you allow me, I would pull in Soren at this concern, because Soren mentioned the gap, the existing gap that there is on the investment side. So what's the plan here from a public funding perspective? How do you plan on this? I mean, on several fronts, the European Commission envisages partnerships with the private side. Is this the case with respect to green digital technologies? Is there anything envisaged at the level of partnerships with the private side?
Yes, so thank you for the question. So we are exactly working on this, and this is the Digital Green Tech Investment Initiative. And it's mentioned as one of the key actions of the EU's SME policy. And it's also, we worked closely with the German presidency. So Germany led, I don't know, I could share it with you, Germany led EU Council conclusion. It is important because it's basically endorsement of all heads of states in the EU that have endorsed a conclusion specifically on digitalization for sustainability. Now, concretely answering your question, so we have in place the AI and Blockchain Investment Fund, which is the model, because we have basically provided 100 million euros of investment from the European Commission and have worked with the private sector and leveraged this to a total investment now of 700 million euros in Europe through the partnership with the venture capital firms. So, and we are now working very much on setting up such a similar investment program in Europe, and particularly through what is called our InvestEU program. But one thing I wanted to also mention, and I really appreciate you invited me to this session. It's great to be part of this. I think what we do need is awareness raising, first of all. Like, I'm always struck, I'm sorry, like if, we wouldn't have connected, Monique and I, people don't know, most people don't know what programs we have. So how can we, we also want to better engage with you. And that's why I sent the link. So next week, we're very excited. On March 19th, we are launching the Digital Green European Green Digital Coalition. This is exactly what you asked for. This is a coalition, a partnership between the private sector and the European Commission to promote digital for green and ICT and the greening of the ICT. So if you can participate in this or endorse it, please join, because it's also, if I may say so, we need like a collective action. If you read carefully the Paris Agreement, and we talked a lot to the United Nations, so they all say that coalitions, in official it's called multi-stakeholder coalitions, are really essential and to raise the awareness. And I want to emphasize the key important role like SMEs and startups are playing in this part, because they are the ones who actually implement, like Nicolas, for instance, has mentioned, or also the other participants mentioned this. Our Ericsson, by the way, is one of the signatory. So Ericsson will be signing the declaration next.
Thanks a lot, Søren. We had a little bit of a connection problem. I think these are great news. I realized that the time is running, and we actually still have the presentation of Giovanni on the working group. So before passing the floor to Giovanni, I would like to ask the speakers to share with us a final remark about what we discussed today. Of course, it's only scratching the surface. We just started a discussion. It's very dense. There's a lot we could say, but as Søren just mentioned, it's through collective efforts that we will help making the difference. And I think it's great that today we had this opportunity. This is only the beginning of much more, hopefully, discussions and work ahead. So I would like to give the floor to Simon, Rob, Nicolas, Federico, and Babak and Søren for a quick final comment, that you would like to share with the audience.
Okay, thank you, Monique. I think we had already the Moore's law and the most important trends to energy efficiency in the ICT sector, which I see also as really important. And on the other side, we have the growth factor, like we need more data, we need more compute intense applications. So that is why we are not reducing the energy demand, not reducing the carbon emissions right now. And this is where we have to act. I think this is the right point to start. And then we also have, of course, the embodied emissions, like the materials that are used to produce all these ICT equipments, which I see as additional in terms of like greenhouse gas emissions. They might not be the hugest parts, specifically for data centers, which are more intense in the usage phase, but we have this IoT equipment, which of course are a lot of devices and have a lot of material in them, and there we need to also tackle these points. And then we need much more data on energy consumption and on greenhouse gas emissions. That is the biggest problem, that you can't manage what you don't measure. Therefore, we need more transparency as well from research, but also from politics to tackle this problem, that we get more data out of these companies. It's also really important. And therefore, I think a lot of other points were said, which I also agree with, like startups. We need innovations in that field that helped us in the past to improve energy efficiency through new technologies. But also we need to change our behavior. That is pretty clear to me. And also for the greenhouse gas emissions, the biggest part is probably the energy consumption. So we also need to look always at the energy sector, energy production, which is really important, and 24/7 clean energy is like a point which we need to focus at when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions and data centers and ICT emissions. This is really important. So that was my final statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very dense. Thank you, Simon. Rob, please go ahead.
Yeah, Simon already said everything I was going to say. Thanks a lot. You know what? It's out away from the data center. When we think about the edge, or you think about individual IoT devices, we also have to think deeply on power efficiency there as well, and how sustainable they can be. I do a lot of stuff, you know, when you're tackling SDGs like poverty and hunger, a lot of them relate to agriculture, right? And increasing crop yields and doing, you know, precision farming. But you're putting lots of devices out in the fields or in rows of crops or in orchards. And having those, you know, it's got compute, it's got networking, it has sensors out it, and making sure those are as sustainable as possible is absolutely critical, you know? And so getting more efficient with compute, using different network, you know, low power network technologies, low bit rate technologies where it's sleeping most of the time, you know, where it can live on a battery, where it can have a solar panel, things like that are absolutely critical. And so in my mindset, you know, especially with the foundation I'm working on for nonprofits, every last bit of it, you know, compute power is always top of everyone's mind, that we really need to shift to energy consumption and getting that balance, kind of like what we have with like ARM processors. You know, I was waiting to hear lots about using ARM processors in data centers. And I know that's still coming. But yes, efficiency is all around us. We just got to do it.
So much, Rob. Also, to always have this positive and energetic attitude. I think this is really what we need and what we want to push forward.
I can comment on ARM and data centers.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
What's the
latest?
Yeah, we had the Eurocloud server project, which was an EU. It was tagged as an EU flagship project 10 years ago. Okay. And we helped, back then 64-bit ARM didn't exist. We worked on a Horizon FP7, an FP7 funded project together with ARM. We created a 64-bit ARM for the server, and then we created a silicon blueprint for a server CPU. A company called Cavium Networks built this. It's the first ThunderX, which was basically came out of EPFL and ARM. So I want to give examples of such things that we created within the EU funding program, and perhaps industry not outside, maybe outside Europe, took advantage of it. So these things exist and they've been around. That was the first server grade CPU that came out of FP7. I just will have my quick closing comment if you want to. I think that, first of all, when it comes to data centers, it's not software, hardware infrastructure. We need to think about algorithms as well. If you have efficient software and efficient hardware and efficient cooling, electricity, but your algorithms just compute things that you cannot quantify in terms of outcome. And AI is a great example of that. There are many AIs with orders of magnitude different complexity requirements that compute the same thing. They predict something. And so we need to think algorithms in mind. And when it comes to funding programs, we need to bring that into efficiency as well. And I want to conclude by saying that there are a lot of good technologies for renewables, for recycling energy. These technologies are slowly emerging, and we can fund and subsidize programs that integrate them together into our ICT ecosystem. That's my closing comment.
Thank you, Babak. Thank you for condensing so much interesting information. Nicolas.
Yeah, a few words about regulation. So you are working especially for most of you in the IT sector and the data center industry. There is some regulation, but very few. I'm working also in buildings, and in buildings there is so many regulations, and always we are facing problems. We are not really a data center when we need to be a data center. We are not really a heating device when we should be a heating device. So we are always facing problems, and it's really a nightmare to try to propose innovative solutions in industries that are not really expecting things that don't understand. And it's a bit of a problem for the policymakers in general. They are not really specialists, and they are not really understanding how they could really impulse some positive laws or regulations. About the public sectors as well, I think one of the key will be the market, I told you before. And I think from the public sector, just giving subsidies is not enough. And I mean, maybe sometimes they should not really distribute subsidies and change it to a public procurement. I think we are discussing for so long with so many public administrations, and there are maybe at some point we will get a contract, but it takes so much time, and they don't take any risks regarding innovative solutions, even if they can take advantage of it. So I think it's a part of the solutions to increase the involvement in the purchasement for public administrations. Last thing I want to say about IoT, edge, and everything else regarding the sustainability of IT industry. We have to consider the obsolescence and the bouncing effect. I mean, the digital industry is like a perpetual bouncing effect, and we should try to tackle it and really increase what we can do with the more powerful CPUs we are getting, and not just continue to increase the usage for I mean, not impactful solutions or things like that. I think we have to rethink how we use the resources to make it count and make it impactful for the society in general.
Sorry, I'm mute. Thank you, Nicolas. Federico?
Yeah, I want to conclude mentioning a couple of things. I think regarding the policies, the European Union but also local government can really do a lot. And not in terms of imposing restriction, but just, for example, supporting the innovation in the proper direction. Because we know that restriction might have the side coin that they might impact in a negative way the economy. But for example, supporting in properly the innovation in energy efficient solution might be a way without constraining who is not yet energy efficiency compliant. So giving space for that. And another important aspect, I think, is on the education side, also in ICT. I think that in some point we lost, when teaching people how to program and so on, we lost a bit of perspective because of the power capacity that everyone has in hands today. So we're used to program in a very extremely efficient way because the hardware we had a small capacity. Now that everything has big capacity, we don't look anymore into this efficiency, and this is impacting, of course, because I'm sure that many of the code that is around can be done in a more efficient way, and this is really rooting in the education part. So, and I have not seen much of this yet happening in the university and so on, and I think this is something we might think of that is important to be pushed as a policy. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Federico. Very important, this call. If you allow me, I would give the floor to Giovanni because the time is running fast. Giovanni Rimassa is the Vice President of the Digital for Planet Association, and he will focus a little bit on anticipating the work of the Green IoT Cloud and Edge Computing Working Group. Please, Giovanni, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Monique. I'm now sharing my presentation. I hope you can see it now. And I would like to start by, let's say, thanking all the speakers because I can just very easily, let's say, bask in their glory and just go very quickly on the various framing aspects of this presentation. That is just to introduce you to the working group that we set up in Digital for Planet. So we have seen that the ICT at large and cloud and edge and IoT systems in particular, they are playing both the hero and the villain in a certain sense into our adventure towards a sustainable digital transformation. So on the one hand, with data from different sources, but there is a general agreement that ICT has potential to help society along the path of sustainability, but it also has costs, right? And we have to address all these conflicts through a balancing act and try to find the right combination between efficiency and features. So Digital for Planet in general, as you heard from Monique at the beginning, has the mission to be a place of meeting, an association that tries to facilitate and tackle all the aspects of sustainable digital transformation. But in particular here, we created a few working groups, and we are now concentrating on the first one, on the green edge and cloud and IoT computing. Now, in general, we have seen it from different angles today, and we are witnessing a convergence basically on the edge computing, that people are reaching it from the cloud side by decentralizing more and more the originally concentrated data centers, and also from the IoT side by trying to put more capacity and more local networking directly to do smart processing of the data close to the place where they are generated. We know that the edge computing also promises that, let's say, a radical solution to some of the energy efficiency and consumption of ICT. But it is clear, we have heard it from Federico, we have heard it from Rob, that the situation is not so simple. There is great promise. This is acknowledged also, we've seen at European Commission level, as Soren showed us with the various coalitions and programs that are being set up, but it is still a complex problem. So what we introduced here with this Digital for Planet working group is a forum that will be hosting and facilitating progress on different aspects of this complicated challenge that we all face. On one hand, more on the roadmap and research innovation agenda. On the other hand, to, let's say, very wide engagement. It's very good what we learned from Soren, that there is this emphasis on multi-stakeholder coalitions. This is exactly what Digital for Planet tries to be within a limited space, to engage different actors and different parties in the global scenario for digital sustainability. And then, of course, we are following very closely the European Commission programs such as the Green Deal and Horizon Europe and Digital Europe and the others, and we want to be part of the conversation. So at the moment, the working group has these 4 objectives, okay? On the one hand, the study and assessment of environmental footprints of cloud, edge, and IoT systems. Then a more technical aspect that we have heard a little bit, I think, from Babak and Federico today, about the architecture, models, and solutions that can be evolved towards a better balance between distribution, energy efficiency, and life cycle, let's say, total life cycle impact on the environment. And then we want to both consider closely the policy development, the participatory aspect of policy development, and also, let's say, not shy away from a more holistic view of the whole digital transformation, general trends through the continuum between cloud, edge, and IoT. So, for the first point, I think all these 4 aspects have been already covered very well by our speakers, and so I think this will not sound particularly surprising or let's say, separated from what we discussed so far. On the footprint, of course, we have seen that on the data center there is both a more structured problem and much more research and technology already let's say, in use, that makes it so that, to their own terms, the best data centers are close to the best that they can ever be. But then there is a very different scenario when we want to extend it to cloud, edge, and IoT continuum because of the discussion of the points that have been made already by the speakers, like that you don't control much, the small devices are everywhere and they are not always optimized. There are also intrinsic things that makes it more difficult to inject efficiency in many small components with respect to one large concentrated element like a data center is. So this certainly needs collaborative work from different stakeholders and different experiences. And this is one, let's say, first part of what the working group wants to achieve. To these activities covering the let's measure what we cannot yet manage as we heard, I think, from Simon before. Second point, more technical, if you want, is really about the architectures and the models. So we, as I said before, the edge computing is being the target of a convergence that starts from the big cloud systems, but also from the small IoT, let's say pervasive set of devices that aggregates data from the bottom up. And again, we have heard that this is never a divide and conquer problem, but we need some end-to-end approach. So whether it is the full life cycle of a device or of a server CPU or even of a full edge server, then we have smart ideas like Nicola to recycle the heat where it is produced, or it is because we have to consider all the impact of the various stack layers of a cloud and edge computing system, from the device up to the network and the infrastructure. And another important thing is that this is not so much about horizontal hyperscaler or device vendor let's say roadmaps, but it is sectorial, it is verticalized, it depends. Are we using the cloud edge for what? Is it farm to fork agriculture? Is it telecommunications, integrated telecommunications, or is it manufacturing and so on? So in this area, we would like to both facilitate discussion like we want to do for the footprint study, but also we are happy to have contribution of direct innovation, let's say in the pre-standardization phase. So if sometimes it is true that these problems are end-to-end, but sometimes a spearhead, a specific case on a specific technology, a specific protocol can help engage and raise awareness on the larger problem. Then there is the policy development aspect that I don't need to I think, cover much, because we heard already a lot from Soren first, and he went to a much more accurate and up-to-date level of information, and you have a lot of links in the chat as well for these things. But anyway, we know that these topics are strategic for Europe. There is already a research innovation effort already in the program H2020 and even FP7 we heard, and they are very important in the upcoming programs, Horizon Europe, Digital Europe, and so on. And again, we heard this, it's a pipeline. If you get stuck at any stage, the whole thing doesn't work. So it's not just about research and innovation, but it's also about combining adoption, combining business modeling, and engaging also smaller actors into this transformation. In this case, the working group would like to mostly be a discussion forum, and also, let's say, converge and support some policy guidelines that then would allow the members with more, let's say, cohesive view to engage with the policy-making initiatives that we heard already are being done at European level. And here again, we have discussed this. So if I want to take a step back and say, okay, but what's the full picture? We have this convergence that has a lot of aspects, including also the connection with artificial intelligence, and the data sovereignty and data location, that is, of course, another very important factor that indirectly affects how we place our systems and how their environmental footprint is going to be. And it was also mentioned, I think, that on top of all that, there is the change, the needs to change the behavior of the society and the population at large. So that's big companies, small companies, private citizens, public institutions, and so on. And this is also a part where our working group wants to be active, because we know that the engagement and the promotion and the awareness raising initiatives are also a very critical tool in these multi-stakeholder and complex society structures that we have today and the problems that we have to face. So that's it for this presentation. I try to summarize the point of the working group connected to what we said, but of course, the important thing is the information here that you can come to us and contact us along our channel. Thank you, Monique.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. Since time is running and would like to finish in maximum 10 minutes, what I would like is to take the floor and go back to a couple of points so I will try to share my screen now. Okay, now I should see my presentation. I skipped a few slides that I had prepared because actually Soren anticipated quite a few things. What I wanted to say is what we're doing in digital for planning to get ready for the Horizon Europe calls, in particular for some of the calls in the main Pillar 2 and Pillar 3. So there's several clusters within Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe that are directly related to the topics that we have discussed today. So there is one cluster that is called Climate, Energy and Mobility, and there is one cluster that is called Food and Natural Resources. There you will find, of course, that the majority of the funding, and here I'm talking about the draft work programs that we had, that we have been consulted on, are very much focused. Then, as you might know, there is a new instrument within Horizon Europe called missions, and there are 5 missions that have been anticipated by the Commission. Apart from the one that is focusing investments on cancer, the other 4 are very much related to what we've discussed today. So I listed in this slide the 4 ones that are adaptation to climate change, including societal transformation, healthy oceans, seas, coastal and inland waters. Then there is one specific dedicated to climate neutral and smart cities. I remind you that we will have a webinar, a digital for planet webinar on smart sustainable cities next week. And then the 4th mission of relevance is soil, health and food. Plus, as already mentioned by Sorel, there are several European Innovation Council calls, especially for small companies and startups for green technologies. Now, what we've discussed today on the more, let's say, IoT cloud edge perspective is clustered within cluster 4 of the Horizon Europe. That is the digital industry and space cluster. Here again, the information that I'm sharing with you is based on the latest draft that we have been consulted on. And soon, actually, I don't know if Soren is still with us, but the calls and the work programs are expected to be published later in April. And possibly the calls will be closing end of summer, beginning of September, or end of September, some of them. So here I mentioned 3 specific destinations. So within the work program, you have specific destinations. The first one that I mentioned here is called Climate Neutral, Circular and Digitized Production. So there it's about adoption and deployment of sustainable technologies, including ICT technologies for greening, in particular the oil manufacturing aspects in several stages. And here there's going to be this Twin Green and Digital Transition 2021 call, which includes a number of topics. Then there is destination 2, that is increased autonomy in key strategic value chains for resilient industry. Again, here, there is going to be a call in 2021 on digitized, resource efficient and resilient industry. And a lot of the discussions I heard today fit very well. So we should put together a proposal together. Then destination 4, digital and emerging technologies for competitiveness and fit for the Green Deal. Of course, here there's a direct call for a number of research and innovation projects on digital and emerging technologies for the Green Deal, which cut across a number of areas. Some relate more on smart cities, some other more on smart food, and so on and so forth. But clearly there are going to be a lot of opportunities. And one of the things we're doing within Digital for Planet is gathering interest and start working on creating consortia and proposals for the upcoming calls. So in case you are interested, in case you are already working on them, it would be good to be in touch with us also after this call. And last but not least, allow me to make a little bit of a promotion for Digital for Planet. It's a non-profit association. The work so far, it's all based on voluntary basis. So we need to gather resources. We're gonna launch membership campaigns soon. So we're gonna try to get support from members possibly all around the world. We have also envisaged to engage students and individuals that might be interested. The idea is very much to gather together organizations so that we can work together at several levels, including the working groups, as Giovanni has anticipated. One of the things that is important is that, of course, the EC funding can be one of the ways we will be able to boost Digital for Planet. Therefore, we will be directly engaged on this front. Now, I think it's difficult in a couple of hours to put together all the elements that we would have liked to share and dig deeper into, but I think our excellent speakers that I would like to thank very much on behalf of the whole Digital for Planet team. We've gathered a lot of pointers, a lot of inputs on a number of initiatives that are very, very important. And as it has been stressed by several of the speakers, the value of collective engagement is absolutely major. So we're very glad that today during our workshop, we had about 70 people on and off, going, leaving. Probably now we have less, but we hope that this is just the beginning of a journey that we need to, as technologists, as researchers, as policymakers, that we need to undertake together. So I would like to thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the next webinar next week on smart sustainable cities.